I used to work in Washington, D.C. Before joining the Yank campaign, and part of my job was to listen to congressional hearings for the Senate and in the House of Representatives. And just basic like infrastructure and all that stuff. Washington couldn't get anything done because of all the partisanship that was happening there, a lot of the lobbying, a lot of the inside money and all that. And so when I was looking for a campaign to join, I was looking for candidates that could help break this. And the only candidate that stood out to me for this was Andrew Yang. Because he didn't want to move left, he didn't want to move right, he wanted to move forward with common sense policies and to actually help our country progress. And that's what attracted me to his campaign. And I think that anyone who cares about this country should volunteer, should do everything they can to help this man get elected and become our next president. And I'd like to introduce my friend Al. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I gotta admit, having to listen to Congress, that might be slightly more annoying than listening to my teenage daughters, but that's what I'll say. But I would like to recognize one individual here in the audience, my friend, State Senator Amanda Reagan. She is a wonderful human being. I always love her because she's got a big smile for me. I'm really excited to be here at the Music Man Square because my daughter was in the actual Music Man and got to play the crazy character of Eulalie McKechnie Shin, so that was exciting. Yeah, you know how crazy that character is. But I'd like to introduce to you a young man who, like many of you, was kind of like, nah, what do I think about politics right now? But got to see Andrew Yang in the debates and really liked some of the common sense answers that he gave. Really liked some of the ideas that Andrew was espousing. And not only that, I will say that this is a man who understands things far better than I do because he is a senior principal scientist at Cambrix Company. I would like to introduce you to my friend, Michael Tracy, everybody.
Thanks, Al. As you said, I'm Mike Tracy, and I'm a precinct captain from Charles City. I'm supporting Andrew Yang for president for many reasons. Tonight, I just wanted to mention two of them. First, Andrew's campaign of Humanity First resonates with me because he is the first candidate to not be so focused on us versus them. He is a candidate for everyone. All of his policies are focused on helping everyone, not just a small group of people. We need someone like him in Washington fighting for all of us. Andrew Yang is the leader that will unite our great country as president. My second reason for supporting Andrew is that from the first time I heard him speak, I knew he was different. He could see the big picture. He has a very analytical mind and provides logical solutions. He understands that the problems of our country did not start in 2016. They began years ago, and we ignored the signs. We can see the result of that fallout right here in Mason City with the mall across the street. It was a busy, vibrant place when we first moved to Charles City back in 2008. Now it is a shell of its former self. But Andrew has a plan to bring businesses back to Main Street. Andrew is focused on beyond just beating Donald Trump. Beating Donald Trump should not be the end goal, but should be the first step of a process uniting our country where every American has value. So please join me in welcoming the next president of our United States, Andrew Yang.
Hello, Mason City, how are you? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a thrill to be here. I love campaigning here in Iowa all the time, but particularly now that we're this close to the caucus. You all are among the most powerful and influential people in our country today. I know it doesn't feel like it, you're just living your lives, coming to check out the occasional candidate who comes through, but I have done the math. Do you know how many Californian voters each of you is worth? 1,000 Californians each. So look around this room tonight. How many of us are here together? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 1,200 people here tonight. It's the biggest group anyone has ever seen. There are about 200 people here tonight, which is still 5 football stadiums full of Californians in terms of voting power. You can do something the rest of our country only dreams about, which is push this country in a new direction. The question is, how are you going to use that power on Monday at 6:30? 7 here? Well, at 6:30 it starts and you register and then we can do some things. Register at 6? Yep. Oh, look at that. So, oh, these details are important. So register at 6 and then start caucusing at 7. I'm running to help address a challenge, problem, question that we've been grappling with, struggling with for the last several years. It's something you've talked a lot about, heard a lot about, but we still haven't fully understood. And that challenge, that question, is this: why is Donald Trump our president today? Or closer to home, how did Donald Trump win Iowa, this purple state, right down the middle, by almost 10 points? Now, if you turned on cable news at any point in the last 3+ years, we've been offered a whole series of reasons and explanations as to why he won. Go ahead and shout one of them out, one that says stuck in your mind.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton's definitely pretty high on that list.
Make America great again.
Yeah, you had a great slogan. We're gonna come back to that. Outsider, not a politician. That there was that. The economy is definitely part of it. Jobs, yes. That's where I am. What? Russia is on the list. Fear-mongering. Disillusionment. Build a wall. Electoral college, perhaps.
Spray tan.
Drain the swamp. Not being a politician. Facebook. James Comey. Twitter. The media. Racism. Immigration.
Going Spurs.
Sexism. Emails. Russia again. Now, all of these things kind of mix together into some big cocktail or stew and presented to us, and here's why he's our president. And a couple of you called out the economy and jobs, which is where I landed when I went through the numbers, because Mason City, I'm a numbers guy. I don't accept a bunch of, frankly, like a bunch of words that journalists came up with as an explanation. I was like, all right, let's go through the numbers and figure out what happened here. And the numbers tell a very clear story that I think many of you actually recognize really personally. The numbers tell us that we eliminated 4 million manufacturing jobs in this country over the last number of years. And where were those jobs primarily located? Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. I have been to the towns in Iowa where the manufacturing jobs dried up. And after those jobs dried up, the shopping district closed, people left, the schools shrank, and that town has never recovered. I saw the same thing play out in Missouri, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, because I spent the last 7 years running a nonprofit that helped create thousands of jobs in the Midwest and the South. And I saw that the water level was going down, not up, in many of these places. Unfortunately, what we did to the manufacturing jobs is now shifting to other parts of our economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in Mason City? I mean, you're laughing. Why are the stores closing? Amazon primarily. 10 years ago, you might have said Walmart. Walmart was like a tank that came to town and started running over mom and pop retailers. Amazon's more like a spaceship, hovering over everything, sucking up $20 billion in business a year, closing 30% of your stores and malls. Most common job in the economy is retail clerk. The average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $12 an hour. What is her next job when the store closes? Fast food, if they don't have a self-serve kiosk at the front of that McDonald's by now. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? That is the math, Mason City. 20 billion out, 30% of your stores close forever. Most common job starts to disappear and you get zero back. These are the changes in our economy that we see around us. They're more widespread than most of us realize. When you all call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or software on the other end, you probably do the same thing I do, which is you dial 000, say human, representative, human, representative, like until you get someone, raise your hand if that's what you do. Yeah, we all do that. That software is miserable. As soon as you hear it, you're like, oh, there's a person working at this company somewhere and I'm not going to find that person. But in 2 or 3 short years, Mason City, the software is going to sound like this. Hello, Andrew, how are you? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, efficient. What will that mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $10 to $14 an hour? Maybe they too can go to the McDonald's. How many of you all know a truck driver here in Iowa? Many of you probably are truck drivers because it's the most common job in 29 states. 3.5 million truckers, 94% men, average age 49. My friends in California are working on robot trucks that can drive themselves. They say they're 98% of the way there. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania a month ago with no human intervention. Why did they choose butter for this maiden voyage? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you will see the story pop up. And at the end of the road was a giant stack of pancakes. I made that up. But everything else is real.
But it's perishable.
Yeah. What will the self-driving robot trucks mean for the 3.5 million truckers in our country, or the 7 million plus Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? How many of you have been to Iowa 80 in Davenport? Yeah, they've got a mean buffet. They say that 5,000 people stop there every day. How many people will stop there if the trucks no longer have drivers? Mason City, we're in the midst of the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the 4th Industrial Revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say the words 4th Industrial Revolution?
30 seconds ago.
Just now. And I'm barely a politician. I'm an entrepreneur who spent the last 7 years helping to create thousands of jobs in the Midwest and the South. I was getting accolades and awards. I was invited to meet President Obama several times, so I got to bring my wife to meet the president. My in-laws were very excited about me that week. But again, I had this sinking feeling that my work was like pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom, and that the water was just rushing out faster and stronger. And then Donald Trump wins. I go through the numbers. I see there's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting area and the movement towards Trump in that area. And this is about to accelerate in unprecedented ways because the technology is getting smarter, stronger, faster in a way that we are not. I can speak for many of us when I say, unless you are some of our kids, like the little girl there, we feel grateful if we don't get dumber in a given day. You know what I mean? Like we're not like getting exponentially smarter. And so I went to our leaders in Washington, D.C., and I said to them, look, we're scapegoating immigrants for problems immigrants have next to nothing to do with. If you go to a factory in Michigan, you won't find wall-to-wall immigrants doing work. What will you find? Wall-to-wall robot arms and machines doing the work that people used to do. So I went to our leaders in DC and I asked them, what are we going to do to help our people manage this transition, this historic transformation? And what do you think the folks in DC said to me when I said, what are we going to do?
Learn to code.
Those were all correct. It's like you were there. The 3 responses I got were number 1, can't talk about that. Number 2, we should study that further, which is form a committee. And number 3 is we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future, which is learn to code. How many of you have ever heard the educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future? Yeah, we all have, right? But Mason City, I'm the numbers guy. I went through the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest? Yes, you guys are so good. You guessed like 10%, 0%. You know it's low because I'm anchoring it low, and so it's clearly low. But you also know it's low because you know human beings. And you know these retraining programs don't work. The success rates were between 0 and 15%, just like you said. They're a total dud. This is the tough truth, and you know, I'm going to share numbers, but the numbers reflect like destroyed lives and communities. The truth is that almost half of the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest left the workforce and never worked again. Of that group, almost half filed for disability. We then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in these communities to the point that America's life expectancy went in decline 3 years in a row. You know the last time America's life expectancy declined 3 years in a row? World War II is a great guess. The right answer is Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic 100 years ago that killed millions. You have to go back 100 years because it's highly unusual for life expectancy to decline in a developed country like the US. It ordinarily goes up and up because we're getting richer, stronger, healthier. But here in the US it went down and then down and then down again. And when I said this to the folks in DC, one of them said something that brought me here to you all tonight in Mason City. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here in DC will do anything about this set of problems because fundamentally Washington DC is a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we would do something about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back with the wave in 2 years. And that was 2 years ago, and here we are. So that's how I came to run for president. And today I'm fourth in the polls and rising to be the Democratic nominee. And because it's 3 days before caucus day, I want to take this opportunity to attack each of my rivals one by one. Just kidding. We raised $16.5 million last quarter in increments of only $35 each, so my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. But there was no corporate PAC money in there. This is just an uprising of the people to take our government back and get it working for us again. Because it's not working for us right now. Who's it working for? Working for Wall Street, big tech, big pharma. Pretty much if your first name is Big and your last name is Company, then they work for you. If you have a normal name, they're like, We're at record high corporate profits, but our life expectancy is trending downward. Which do you listen to? If you're us, you clearly listen to life expectancy because it's our lives. But DC can't see that. DC is just blinded by the money. Washington, DC today is the richest city in our country. Think about that for a second. What do they produce? We don't know. This is pretty funny, guys. Whatever they produce, Mason City, I'm reporting to you that business is awfully good. Donald Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp. Mason City, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to distribute the swamp. Why do you employ hundreds of thousands of government workers in the most expensive city in your country? Why wouldn't you move some of those jobs to Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa? You would save billions of dollars immediately, and I would argue that these government agencies and regulators would make better decisions because they were living someplace normal and not in a DC bubble where they just talk to each other. I'm for term limits for members of Congress. They should be doing your work and then come home. They should not be going there and say, ooh, I like it, let me stay. And Mason City, I know how we can get term limits passed. I will be your president a year from now. Thank you for that. And then I will go to Congress and say, we need 12-year term limits, both houses. Make Congress much more dynamic and responsive to the will of the people. So let's pass 12-year term limits, but current lawmakers are exempt. Do you think they'll pass that? Oh yeah, they'll pass that the next day. They'll say, we do this for the people. Because it doesn't affect them. It just affects whoever comes after them. They'll walk around being like, oh, look at that. I can still do whatever I want. But then eventually they too will get phased out or lose, and then we'll wind up with a Congress that actually is much more responsive, because they'll be more free to vote their conscience. They'll be trying to do work on our behalf, and they know they're not going to stay there forever. We need to break the stranglehold that corporate money has in our government. And people talk about Citizens United, which I would love to see overturned, but the fact is corporate money ran that town before Citizens United. So what's the answer? How many, actually no, that was a too personal question, but I'll tell you. 5% of Americans or less donate to political candidates or campaigns. So if you're in that 5%, go ahead and pat yourself on the back. You don't have to do it visibly, but if you do it, that's good. So how do you get that percentage up to a higher level and also wash out the lobbyist cash that's now taken over the government? My plan is to give every American voter $100 democracy dollars every year, use it or lose it. You can just donate to any candidate or campaign you want. What percentage of Americans do you think would give if you literally had $100 free dollars every year that you could give? This gentleman said 95%. I'm dubious because Americans are kind of lazy. I can't imagine 95% of Americans doing anything.
You said use it or lose it.
It is use it or lose it. And even then, I still think a lot of Americans would be like, they're still trying to get me. But let's say you got it to 60%, 65%. That would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 5 to 1. Because imagine if you were a legislator, you get 10,000 Americans to give you their $100 democracy dollars. That's $1 million. And then if a lobbyist comes and says, here's $80,000, you're like, I don't touch that, because then the people are going to turn on me and I'm getting a lot more from them than I am from you. This is how we can turn our government around and make it work for us again. But it's going to have to start at the top. We have to get someone into the White House who does not owe the corporations a dime. Donald Trump is not the cause of all of our problems the way many Democrats have been arguing. He's a symptom of a disease that has been building up for years. It is up to us to get to work curing the disease. It has to start on Monday. I'm the Asian doctor for the job. Now, it's not enough just to get DC actually working for us again, though that would go a long, long way. It's also about actually getting this economy working for us, our kids, our families, our community again. Now, if you're here today, you've seen the ads, first raise your hand if you've seen TV ads. The Russians, no, it's not. All right. Raise your hand if you've seen TV ads about me and the campaign. Good, because we spent a lot of money on those ads. So if you've seen the ads or seen any of the messaging or heard Michael, you may know I'm about giving every American $1,000 a month starting at age 18. Raise your hand if you knew that. Keep your hand up if you think that's unrealistic, too good to be true, and we can't make it happen. Put your hand up, that's fine. That's fine. I understand. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea, Mason City. Thomas Paine was for this at the founding of our country. He called it the citizen's dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King fought for this in the 60s, what he was fighting for when he was killed. We just celebrated his birthday last week. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists endorsed this plan in the 60s. It was so mainstream it passed the US House of Representatives twice under Nixon in 71. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? Alaska. And how does Alaska pay for it? Oil. And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, technology, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study came out recently that said that our data, your data, is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? If your data is now worth billions of dollars a year and you're not getting a dime of it, who's getting all that money? Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, the biggest tech companies that are paying nothing or next to nothing back into our country. Mason City, this is what we have to change. All this value that's getting sucked out of your community, we have to bring it back. We give you your tiny, our tiny, fair share of every data sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, every robot truck mile. We can easily afford a dividend of $1,000 a month for each and every one of you. Particularly because when this money is in your hands, where will it actually go? How much of it would stay right here in Iowa? Most all of it. Not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password. And another event, someone's like, never. But most of it would go to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, religious organizations. Mason City, this is the trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. This is how we rebalance what has been building up for decades. The gaps between us and the big companies, the gaps between rural towns and big cities. This economy we're in the midst of is the most extreme winner-take-all economy in the history of the world. And it's about to get even more extreme when a lot of the technologies I'm describing actually start hitting the roads. What I'm describing, this dividend, is actually the only way we can rebalance it and get it working for us and our families again. How many of y'all are parents like me and Evelyn? If you're a parent, you've had this sinking feeling in the last number of days, months, years, that our kids are going to inherit a future that is less stable, less secure, and less prosperous than the lives that we have led. You know why we feel that way? Because it's true. If you were born in the 1940s in this country, there was a 93% chance you're going to be better off than your parents. That's the American dream. That's what brought my family here. That's what we aspire to for our kids. But if you were born in the 1990s in this country, you're down to a 50-50 shot and it's declining fast. That's why the parents feel the way we do. That's why young people feel like the deck is stacked against them. Because it is. Mason City, it is up to you to change this for yourselves and your families and your community. And it can start on Monday. We can make it so that we can look our kids in the eyes and say to them, your country loves you, your country values you, and your country will invest in you and your future. We can actually turn it around so the economy is working as well for us as it is for these big companies that have been running us into the ground for decades. That has to be the challenge. The challenge is not, let's send a good person over to the White House and then go on with watching our towns decline. Iowa's been ground zero for this for years. It started on your farms with the mechanization and consolidation of many of the agricultural jobs. Then it shifted to your factories, wiping out 40,000 manufacturing jobs and counting. Now it's on your main streets, closing 30% of your stores and malls. And you know these malls can go from cheery to spooky awfully quick. You have to turn it around before it hits your highways. If we don't do anything over the next 4 years, are things going to get better or worse? Worse. Yes. And our kids deserve better than this. I'm not running for president because I dreamt about being president. Those were not the conversations in the Yang household, trust me. I'm running for president because, like so many of you, I'm a parent and a patriot. I have seen the future that lies ahead for our kids, and it is not something I'm willing to accept for them. They deserve better. We must give them better. That is what this election is about improving your way of life. We're being told how great things are every day. Record high stock market prices, record low unemployment, record high corporate profits. But we know things are not great. What else are at record highs in the United States of America right now?
Poverty,
Poverty, suicide, debt, addiction,
Homelessness.
imprisonment, homelessness, depression,
Credit card debt.
credit card indebtedness, mental health crisis. Someone said intolerance, which I would buy. Medical debt, stress, anxiety, student loan indebtedness, like you name it, they're all at record highs in the United States of America right now. You know what our record lows in the United States right now? Starting a business for a young person, getting married, having a child. We've been worshiping these companies' bottom line while our way of life falls apart in Mason City. That's what's happened. We have to line it up. I know how completely off base the economic measurements are because of my family. My wife is at home every day with our 2 boys, one of whom is autistic. How much is her work valued at in these economic measurements that we currently use?
0.
She gets a 0. How about every stay-at-home parent in the country? How about caregivers taking care of ailing loved ones? Volunteers and activists trying to do something positive? Most coaches and mentors trying to do right by our kids? Most artists, hate to say that. Most artists get a 0 right now. You know one thing we don't talk about in Mason City, but it's really crucial? How about local journalists? We've put almost 2,000 local newspapers out of business over the last number of months because their advertising revenue went up to the cloud and you can't run a newspaper on that. So now there are 200 counties in the US that don't have any local news. What doesn't function very well if you don't have local news? Democracy, because how can you vote on what's going on in your community if literally no one is covering what's going on in your community? Mason City, these are the things we claim to value most in our lives. Our kids, our families, our community, our democracy, and they're getting zeroed out one by one by one. This is what we must change. We have to dispel this confusion that has somehow overtaken us for years, that economic value and human value are the same things. They're not. We can make the case to our fellow Americans that we each have intrinsic value as Americans, as citizens, and as shareholders of the richest country in the history of the world. We can make the case that we do not exist to work for the economy. The economy exists to work for us. My wife and I were talking about how the heck something so mainstream 50, 60 years ago now seems so dramatic. The truth is, Mason City, we should have made these kind of moves 50, 60 years ago. And the imbalances have just gotten incredibly extreme and historic since then. And our politicians don't see it at all. Like they're just lurching from press conference to press conference, and cable news hit to cable news hit, and fundraiser to fundraiser, and just sort of advancing.
$1 billion or more by media in Congress.
Yeah, and if they get there, then they're now at the trough, you know. And that's like, and like the goal is to stay at the trough. Like nothing changes fundamentally.
Career politicians.
This is one reason why I'm the strongest opponent.
Yeah, I'm a veteran, and the VA has been broken for years.
Yes.
What are you going to do to fix it?
First, thank you for your service, sir. To me, we owe you a sacred debt, and that doesn't end when you de-enlist, it ends the day you die. And I can speak for everyone here and 99% of Americans when I say that I would much rather spend money on treating you with the dignity and care that you deserve and that you earned than buy an extra set of bombers or an aircraft carrier or some other piece of equipment. So we need to put the resources into the VA so that I can actually give you the care that you deserve. But the fact is, at this point, the VA now is sort of unresponsive and has this major waiting list, and so it might not even be a money thing. So we need to give them a bit of a kick in the pants in addition to money. And so what I proposed is that there's a reasonable wait list period that they're allowed to keep you on, and then if it exceeds that period, then you can go get whatever treatment you need wherever you want, and the VA will pay for it for you. And then we will take all of that overrun based upon the fact that the VA could not see you promptly, and then we will calculate essentially a way to dock the administrators of the VA their salary based upon the fact that they couldn't actually deliver. Because one of the frustrations we all have is that it does not seem like our government is accountable to us. That they can keep you waiting in limbo for years and like nothing happens to them, and you're just sort of this like person being like, aren't I supposed to be the person you're like designed to serve? Like, why does it seem like I am subject to you and your arbitrary bureaucracy and whims all the time? This is what we have to change as a country together in Mason City. We have to make it so that we feel like our government is working for us again. I'm going to describe one relatively simple change, but I think it would really be very positive for us. If you were to run a business and you were to get hundreds of billions of dollars from your customers on a single day, you'd probably be pretty happy about that day, right? That's what tax day is. But tax day is just a miserable chore to all of us. We all dread it. We're all like, oh no, like, this is terrible. So here's what I'm going to do as your president. I'm going to change tax day into revenue day. I'm going to make it a national holiday. I'm going to bring families in from all over the country to celebrate this great day where we get to celebrate our country for another day. I'm going to send you a thank you video with Oprah, Tom Hanks, and The Rock saying thank you for sending your tax revenue in and keeping our country going for another great year. And then you can elect the last 1% of your taxes, you can send it to whatever branch of government you want to support the most, and then you'll get an extra thank you video from those people saying, thank you for choosing the US Forest Service, and like you have them like doing this thing. Would this make you all feel a little bit better about tax day? But this is just common sense customer service. If you have hundreds of millions of customers giving you hundreds of billions of dollars, you might want to say thank you. Just a thought, you know? So there are like some basic things that we should start implementing to make it seem like our government actually works for us again. As your president, I will work for you every single day. And I'll get the VA working for you, sir. I'm sick and tired of hearing from veterans who are getting treated in these awful, inhumane ways by this bureaucracy. It's not right.
Okay, Andrew, as a lover of math and statistics and data, what percent of the population do you anticipate will use the UBI in a fiscally responsible manner?
Thank you. I love this question. So first, as a backdrop, imagine a country, which we can make reality very, very quickly, where starting at age 18, you get $1,000 a month, which is your senior year in high school typically. So first semester, senior year, you have a class in financial literacy to prepare you as to what you're going to do with this money. The kids will be like, ooh, I'm so excited. And then the money's going to start coming in their senior year. And then their senior spring, we send them to another part of the country to live and work for a month called the American Exchange Program so they can get some exposure. And they don't learn anything senior spring anyway. So we might as well give them some. So this is a way we can imbue citizenship with real meaning. Now, Now that would get the number of people who are, vigilant about how they spend or save this freedom dividend. It would get it up over time. In terms of the general American population, you would see a whole range of distribution of what you would consider uses that we would be excited about. But the big argument I would make is that if you have a company like Microsoft or Verizon and they declare a dividend, which they do, they give the money to shareholders, which they do, you know what they never do? They never go and check what the shareholders spent the money on. You know what I mean? They never say, hey, here's the dividend, but make sure you don't use it on something we don't like. I mean, that's where we are as a country, where we have to trust ourselves and our people to make decisions with their own resources. And if they make a particular decision in January, maybe they'll make a different decision in February. But to me, people are the answer, not the problem. And so we have to trust in our people. I do want to make financial literacy and financial counseling essentially freely available. I also will make it so that you can't borrow or lend against your freedom dividend, because financial companies would come up with all sorts of weird products, being like, hey, how about you give me your dividend, low interest rate of 30% or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So you would need some protections and training in place. But I'm optimistic about the way people would use their money, in large part because of the way that people respond to this. It's like if I say, hey, you're gonna get $1,000 a month, here's the way most Americans respond. I know what I'd use it on, and it'd be great. But I don't know about that other person. But then you go to that other person thinks the exact same thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, it turns out we're all that person. I believe in the American people that we can actually use the resources to improve our own lives when it's put in our hands.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi. I had the chance to see you earlier, and we connected over being autism parents, and I liked what you had to say so much last time that I brought the kids this time to hear you as well, so they're very excited. One of the questions that I've had is, I really like the universal basic income, because when I look at working parents who are homeless, I see that this plan would put a big dent in reducing homelessness for people who are actually job earners, which is a large portion of the homeless. And I also know something about trying to support a family on $1,000 a month of working full time, just working for our public schools. Now, maybe the question that I would have is, as I sit down and do the calculations, I wonder why not maybe not $1,000 a month for a child, but what would happen about setting a smaller allowance per child? And when I think of that, if you had 2 adults in the home, $2,000 is going to get you pretty far. It's not going to raise you above the poverty line, but it's going to help you a lot with those basic necessities.
Yes.
When I look at child poverty today, especially in our community, I certainly see where having something to help offset the childcare costs and the costs of working and things like that might help really move the needle on child poverty.
Thank you for the question. And also, thank you for being such a superhero. I know that parents with autistic children do so much every single day, and I just want to express my gratitude to you, because I know what that is. I love the dividend so much because of what you just described, where there are too many people who are working hard and not making enough to even put a roof over their head. And $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year is enough to level up many, many families to a level that's much more secure and stable. Now, when it comes to an additional allowance for each child, one of the principles of the freedom dividend is that actually is just flowing to the individual on their own behalf, so that when you're 18 you get it, then it's yours. And that I think is something that is really powerful and profound. But we need to do more for families so that you can make sure that you can care for your children in all sorts of ways. So I'm going to give you a whole list of things that I support to give you a sense of how I want to lighten the burden on moms in particular. Number one, we should have paid family leave in this country for new moms, day one. Here are the list of countries in the world that do not have paid family leave for new moms. United States of America, Papua New Guinea. That's the whole list. But I'm going to tell you a really embarrassing story. I memorized this list a year ago. And a year ago, also on the list were Lesotho, Swaziland, and Liberia. And would you believe it? Those 3 countries got off the list in the last year, and they passed paid family leave, and we did not. Are we clapping for them or just disgusted with ourselves? I mean, what the heck? We just lost a race to Swaziland anyway. So, I think everyone here knows it's common sense that a parent, a mom in particular, should be able to spend time with their child and have it be paid for. But that's just, like, it pays for itself many, many times over. Then we need to subsidize childcare from day one, because childcare right now essentially eats up almost a full-time salary depending upon who you are and what you're doing. So if you decide that you want to bring your kid to childcare, we should be subsidizing that. We should have mandatory pre-K, so when it starts at age 4. And I'm very passionate about this because I'm a numbers guy. The numbers clearly show that the more resources you invest in these kids early on, and the more it changes their educational outcomes. So we have to do much, much more to support moms and families. And I would also not stop at this freedom dividend of $1,000 a month. There are many families, particularly families with special needs, who need more than $1,000 a month per adult in the house. To me, this universal basic income, this freedom dividend, is like a foundation or a floor, and we need to continue to build on top of it, particularly for families with special needs. The reality is that special needs kids grow up to become special needs adults very, very often. So on the special needs education front, right now Congress funds 15% of the special education needs in our schools, and communities don't have the resources to fill in that gap. Like, do you have 85% of the needs and so as your president, I will take that 15% to 100% and get get this burden off of the backs of your towns and communities. Say, look, this is a national priority. If you have a kid with special needs, we have to have a teacher that can help invest in them early on. And this is not a feel-good thing. Again, what's the difference between having a kid who's going to grow up to become healthy, productive, and independent, or a kid who's going to need assistance the rest of their lives? Like, what is that value difference? It just makes perfect sense as a society to invest in trying to achieve one outcome over the other. So we need to do more at every stage and humanize the economy. And I would not stop at this $1,000 a month. There are many, many other things we can do. One of the primary messages I hope you feel from me, Mason City, is the sense of abundance and possibility. I have seen it because I saw what we did for the Wall Street banks 12 years ago. Do you remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street? No, we never would have voted for that. Like, if you had a choice between bailing out Wall Street for $4 trillion or keeping Americans in their homes, which would you have chosen? Keep Americans in their homes. Mason City, this time we're going to choose ourselves over the banks, the pharma companies, the tech companies. As your president, I will invest in you and your families because those companies have had a sweet ride for far too long.
That's all the time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give it up for the next President of the United States, Andrew Yang.
Thank you, Mason City. Let's make history together. On Monday, it starts on Monday at 6 p.m.
Andrew's got a couple of minutes to mingle, but then we got to take him back on the bus. Thank you all so much for being here. We'll see you on caucus night, 6:30 on Monday. We love you all and thank you.
Hold up stream. Sorry for the 3-minute downtime. I actually wasn't even at the camera for most of this event. The Trump hat. I gotta interview this guy. Hold on.
Okay.
move this so they can hear you. It's like a wide angle lens, so it gets, you're good. So the reason I was just watching Andrew there, and I was gonna walk up to him and try to get shots of him, but then I saw your Trump hat, which instantly caught my attention, because one of the things that I think is unique about Andrew is he gets a lot of interest and some even support from those on the other side of the aisle. So I was wondering, what made you decide to come out to this event tonight to hear Andrew Yang speak?
I've been to 3 other ones, like Democratic candidates. I wanted to see what he was about, so that's why I wanted to come and check him out. I gotta admit that of the fourth one, he makes the most sense of all of them so far. And I'm real close to almost changing my mind. And I've been a big like what he had to say tonight. He had a really good idea. And I like to see the stuff. There's still a couple things that I don't like, but for probably 80% of what he said tonight, I really do enjoy what he said and agree with it. So I was very impressed.
Wow, that's really awesome to hear. So you think
I like the stuff that the way he explains things comes across different than what the commercials say on TV.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe when you hear him in person versus when you see him on the television screen or in the news or whatever. Is he? So you think that there's a chance that you might, or I assume, are you a registered Republican? Or
I'm independent.
Independent, but you would perhaps consider registering as a Democrat on caucus day to
I'd have to
caucus forum?
I'd have to think about it. But
Yeah.
It almost made me take my hat off tonight when I would think of that.
Wow.
But I was impressed.
That's incredible. What is your name, by the way?
Alan Kinger.
Alan.
Yeah.
Matt, nice to meet you.
Nice
Yeah.
to meet you.
I lean to the right myself, so like, and I'm out here like going around. I've been on his whole bus tour, live streaming and
I was hoping
everything.
I could
So,
ask him a question because I really wanted to, but they didn't.
what is it that you were?
I want to know about Social Security. What his plan was for that? That's what I really want to hear.
The one thing I know is that the freedom dividend, it would stack on top of Social Security.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be. I mean, it depends on where you are on the right side of the aisle. Some don't like Social Security and want to get rid of it. Others want it to stay. But
You want to keep it?
with his plan, it would be actually effectively be the largest expansion of Social Security since Social Security was enacted, because you'd add a $12,000 per year addition onto what you're already getting through Social Security. Yeah. But I thank you so much for coming out and being willing to give Andrew a chance.
Yeah.
Have a great night. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. That is why we're going to win, guys. Trump supporters for Yang. I gotta get this up ASAP. I know you guys want to see Andrew, but I gotta get this tweet out about this guy.
Matt. Is it Matt? Yep. I always watch you on stream, but you're from Maryland, right? I'm from Maryland. I'm from DC.
Like right between DC and Annapolis and Baltimore. Here, let me mute this real quick.
Okay.
Are you here volunteering? Like canvassing and shit?
I live in Seattle now, so like maxed out, came here to try to caucus or to canvas.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I love I love people that have decided to literally put everything they have into the campaign literally to come out here to Iowa.
Yeah.
And I respect you. Do you have like a Twitter or anything?
I don't.
Damn.
I don't have a Twitter, sorry.
There's a lot of people watching. I can get them to shout you.
But everyone keep on donating to the Andrew Yang campaign because I know the deadline's tonight. I've maxed out. I tell my sisters, my mom and dad to donate, so they do too. My girlfriend also.
I just talked to this guy.
Yeah.
He was wearing the Trump hat.
Yeah.
And he was like, I almost took the hat off tonight. And he was like, I'm gonna consider caucusing for Andrew. It's incredible.
It's working. We were canvassing, and there are people considering Andrew, and some people who already have the Andrew Yang lawn sign out there, so it's working.
What's your name?
I'm Brian.
Brian.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, dude.
All right.
I gotta roll because I gotta run to Decorah. It's like an hour, 40 minutes away.
Have fun. Be safe.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see if I can go through the back exit. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, sweet. I walked in this way, even though it's like, you know, the Andrew Yang entrance. But they let me come through. Because honestly, this is what happened, stream. I got to my arrival destination, like on the GPS. And then I got there and I was like, there are no cars here. There's nothing here. Where am I? And then right at the same time, I saw the Yang bus and I was like, and then I just started following the bus. And then, but the bus was driving around all weird too. I wonder if they had the same issue. And I was like, am I following around an empty bus that's just trying to park? Like I was genuinely like, dang, I'm gonna miss the speech. But no, luckily we got it all, except for the 3 minutes that I wasn't paying attention. Speaking of the bus, oh, I won't flip around. There goes the bus. But that's okay, I'll catch up to them later. Okay, let me call Darth Clyde to cut the stream. Oh, it's snowing. Hey man, I'm ready to cut the stream. Yang gang, keep donating, stream. Oh, there's the Trump supporter. There's Alan. There's Alan. Yeah, Alan. All right, just cut it. Whenever you hear my Alan.